David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another ink review. Today I have for you the latest limited edition ink from Papier Plume called Rougarou. Now, this ink was originally available in a set, which also included some additional items, but just a couple of days after Papier Plume launched these sets, they completely sold out, so they were rather popular. While these sets are no longer available, the ink is, as well as a couple of items from the set which are sold individually, and I'll show you everything that was included in that set. So, in order to get a closer look at the ink and those items, please join me over here at camera 2. So here is the Papier Plume Rougarou. This comes in a 30 milliliter bottle. The Rougarou is a creature that is featured in Cajun folklore. It's basically their version of a werewolf. The creature is said to prowl the swamps around New Orleans and is typically used in stories to, kind of inspire fear and obedience. Children would be told something like, "You better be home by dark or else the Rougarou will get you." There's also a wax seal here on the top of a werewolf, which I'll show you a little bit more about in a minute. This is what the ink looks like. It is a very kind of pepper gray or a wolf gray. In regard to some comparisons, this is what it looks like with Visconti black. And here it is with Private Reserve's Velvet black. And here it is with J. Herbin's 1670 Stormy Gray. And here it is with Three Oysters Doldum. This is what it looks like on some 52-gram Tomoe River paper. This is with a Q-tip application, and then this is with a smear, and this is with some very, very heavy drops. You can see here with the regular applications, there was very little in the way of bleed through. And now there was a lot here, but I literally put tons of ink on that. It's actually, even though it's been here for several days, it's still a little bit wet to the touch. But you can see with the lighter applications, there is a bit of shading here. But even with the super heavy application, it's rather bold and dark, and there's really not much in the way of sheen to that. Now, I did mention the set, along with the ink, also came this little baggie, and inside here we had a couple of pieces of wax, and then there was a really nice wax seal that actually has that werewolf on it, and then also is some of this cream, which I've really never worked with before, but I'll show you here in a second what that does. So, you know what, actually, before we look at the ink, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's just fold up this Tomoe River paper, and we'll just put a little bit of this wax on here. Let me at least get the orientation. You know what, something that I wish that they had with wax seals is, you can see I marked it just a little bit here, but I wish they had a kind of an orientation mark so you knew which way to hold it, so you weren't always having to kind of check. So it's like, okay, I need to hold it this way. Usually I'll get like a Sharpie or something like that and mark it. It's hard to see here. I think it rubbed off a bit, but I did mark that. So let's actually go ahead and do this. You know what? Let's go ahead and use the red. And when it comes to this type of wax, you know what? I typically like the wax that you could just burn as opposed to the ones with the wicks, just because once you get the wick going, it does do a good job of, melting the wax. It tends to go a little bit slower than the wax that you could just burn. I usually count 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe around 15, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, maybe one more. And then usually what I end up doing in order to put the ink out is then I will go ahead and smear it all around into kind of a circle. And that kind of puts the fire out. And then we go ahead and use the actual wax seal. Let's see if we actually got enough on here. You know what? We really didn't get enough wax on there in order to make that look right. So let me go ahead and You know, that's one neat thing with wax seals is you can kind of redo it. So you can see here that I didn't quite get enough on here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of more. I'm just kind of giving it a little bit of extra here. And now we'll go ahead and try this one more time. We'll let that sit just for a second. That's a little bit better. I should have let it sit just a little bit longer, but you can see here that now we have that nice werewolf that is on here. Now I'm going to let this dry just for a second, and then we could use this cream. So there's a number of ways to apply this cream. You could use a brush or you could use a Q-tip. I'm just going to use my finger. There's better ways of doing that, but you could just put a little bit on here and you could use it to just as an accent color to accent the seal a little bit. And you can see that the wolf kind of shows up a little bit better on there. I find this cream to be interesting. It comes in silver as well as gold. Okay, back to the ink. We had the Papier Plume Rougarou. This is Rhodia 80 gram paper. I find the ghosting and bleed to be low. This is another Q-tip application. You can say there's very little ghosting or bleed. I'd say the shade is medium and the sheen is low. In regard to pens, I have a few things here. To start off with, I have a pen that I'm going to be reviewing in the next couple of weeks, which is a brand new release from Benu, and that would be the Skulls and Roses, to where in the middle we have the skulls on the band, and then we have the roses throughout the cap and barrel. And there's actually 3 different versions of these. One in all red, one in all black, and then there's this model here that has a combination of the red band and then the black for the rest of the stuff. And then also a red section. So for here we have the Benu Skulls and Roses. And this particular nib is an extra fine. Next up, we have a pen that if I ever did a video on underrated pens, this would be very high on the list, and that would be the Faber-Castell Lume. This pen has an amazing nib. I just love this. This is one of my favorite steel nibs. So this is the Faber-Castell Lume, and this is a medium nib. And finally, we have a pen that I really enjoy with a nib that I really enjoy, which is a Pilot Custom 912, and this is one with a music nib. For a lot of my ones with specialty nibs, I always leave the sticker on there because a lot of the Pilot pens look alike, and it helps to remind me what nib is exactly on there. This is the music nib. You can see that there are multiple slots there, or multiple slits, and it makes for a really nice line. So we have the Pilot Custom Heritage 912, and this is a music nib. And then I didn't mention it before, but the top as well as the passes are here with this Pilot Parallel, and this is the 3.8 millimeter version. Okay, in regard to a writing sample, I thought that I'd talk a little bit about the Rougarou itself. I said that the name derives from loup-garou, which is the French word for werewolf. And then in regard to the loom, I said here that in the Harry Potter universe, an American wand maker by the name of Violetta Beauvais would include a Rougarou hair in the core of her wands. I believe her name is seen in a newspaper in one of the Fantastic Beasts films. I just need to get it in there. I kind of went off the side of the page and didn't quite have it centered when I was writing. And finally, with the Pilot Custom Heritage 912, I was holding it at an odd angle, so it wasn't quite flowing like I wanted. And this is one of my favorite quotes from a movie that I really enjoy called What We Do in the Shadows, which is about a bunch of vampires. And as they were going around a late night in a park, they run into a group of werewolves, and the werewolves proceeded to curse at them a little bit. And the leader of the werewolves chastised his group and says, "What are we?" And then everyone kind of repeats back and says, "Werewolves, not swearwolves." If you haven't seen that film, it's very funny. And then even the TV show is hilarious as well. Something I highly recommend. I would say that the flow here is medium. For the drying time, for the extra fine, it was between 10 and 15 seconds. And for the medium, it was between 15 and 30. In regard to waterproofness, they don't contest that it is waterproof, but let me go ahead and put some water down here. And that while that is sitting for a second, we will take a look into some chromatography. The chromatography of this ink really surprised me, especially for being so dark. There was a lot of grays and yellows and blues and oranges and even lighter blues in it. This is what the chromatography ended up looking like. And like I said, for an ink that is basically a gray, especially some of these color elements, really surprised me that they were found in here. And then in regard to the waterproof test, they don't contend that this is waterproof, but it actually performed okay. Well, some of these lines here, but I'd say that if you got the water up rather quickly, that you would be okay with that. But if it's something that's there for a long time, then you're going to have some issues. What I said here was Papier Plume Rougarou is a dark gray with some deeper character that works well for someone who is looking to mix things up a bit from a straight black. This ink is available on the Papier Plume site for a limited time and is $10. And so their inks are always very reasonably priced, and they come out with a lot of really interesting limited edition inks. And like I said, someone that is wanting, that enjoys darker inks but wants something just a little bit different than a straight black, this is definitely something worth checking out. Thanks again. Go out to Papier Plume for providing this ink for review. I'll put a link below in the notes where you can check this out on their site. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.